you and I are going to disagree on Zelensky because a long time ago, not relatively that long ago, Ukraine had nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
Why? These were left over from when they were part of the Soviet Union.
Okay.
These were believed to be unstable, and it was believed that they didn't have the right personnel who knew how to handle these after the fall of the Soviet Union. But they
Okay.
still had nuclear weapons. They gave them up voluntarily because the US and other powers said we will make sure you aren't invaded by Russia. We will effectively guarantee your borders. What we're doing is, in my estimation, actually a half-assed attempt to hold up that agreement that was made back in late 80s, early 90s. So part of me actually believes we should perhaps have a little bit more direct involvement to bring the conflict to an end sooner. Not saying boots on the ground, but maybe a no-fly zone.
Okay.
But I think there's also some realpolitik going on in terms of international relations where folks just see this as a great way to just bleed Russia. Like they don't actually want it to end. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there are some analysts within the annals of the Pentagon or the CIA, out in Langley, suggesting, hey, we could just make this Afghanistan 2.0 as far as the Russians are concerned, because Afghanistan was the Soviet Union's version of Vietnam,
Okay.
and it's all the Ukrainian conflict is already creating conflict within Russia, and I'm sure there are some people in Washington who would love to see that happen.
Okay. Well, something to keep in mind, of course, to probably to your point, is that this is not an unprovoked attack. And I will disagree with how that's being reported in the mainstream media. It has always been made clear by Putin that if NATO encroached upon its borders, it would interpret that as an attack or as preparation to attack or to step into boundaries that it's not supposed to. NATO has done that. Every
How?
country has a right to its autonomy,
Oh,
whether
you
we
say
like
every
them or
country
not.
every country has a right to its autonomy, what, except for Ukraine?
No, but if by invading the Ukraine, if by supporting the Ukraine, you're encroaching upon Russia's autonomy, and
You're not
he
encroaching
knows in
upon Russia's
advance,
autonomy. What Ukraine does has nothing to do with Russia. They're
but
two
Russia
separate
views it
countries.
as an encroachment.
Who cares if they view it as an encroachment? It does not directly impact Russia if the Ukrainian people in their democracy said we would like to consider joining Europe. That's the other thing.
True,
NATO didn't
they did
actually
say
encroach
that.
on anybody. They
True, but
the
in
Ukrainian
so
people said we'd like to
encouraging the
talk
Ukraine, true, but
about.
encouraging that conversation from Putin's perspective,
Yeah,
from his perspective, whether we agree with it or not, knowing the way his mind thinks from what we know about him, ex KGB, martial arts, lawyer, billionaire, very strategic in his thinking, composed for the most part. How could this planet not have expected this reaction? Is my question.
oh, I think that possibly here's how, because they knew it would ruin his economy. He doesn't care that it's going to ruin his economy,
I
that it
was just going
has
to say,
ruined
yeah,
his
but that
economy.
doesn't matter to him because he and the oligarchs are protected. So I mean,
Exactly. So I
sanctions
think,
only go so much. Sanctions only work if the person is not prepared for them.
right. And I think that's possibly where we messed up. But also, I believe there are people who said, okay, sure, we will threaten the sanctions. And if you actually go through with this, fine, your economy will be ruined for the next 10 years. And they want a just long drag. They want Afghanistan 2.0. But I will say this, just because someone says, if you say the word I'm going to take that as a racial slur and I'm going to feel offended and triggered. You've encroached upon my peace and well-being. Okay, great. But if I say, but that's still kind of ridiculous if I say that you're going to react this way. So if I do say knowing you're going to react that way, that doesn't make the fact that these are the conditions that you've created any less ridiculous. So I believe Russia definitely has autonomy within
Mhm.
the borders of Russia, but the Ukrainians have autonomy within the borders of Ukraine, do they not?
True. But we can't mistake for Ukraine suddenly being filled with saints just because they're in a war with Russia, because less than 5 years ago, we were accusing them of corruption.
We were accusing, yes, and that was a completely different president.
True, but the same system was in place. Like, again, it's like the United States. Just because you replace the president doesn't mean the system's not in place, and the people who are behind the scenes are still in place.
Well, what you're ignoring is that the Ukrainian president that was head of that system was, one, a Russian puppet, and two, they had an entire revolution since then. So it's not the same system. The 2014 revolution, that's the thing. Russia and Ukraine have been in a cold, not even a cold war, a hot-ish war since 2014, when Russia invaded Crimea, took that over and annexed it. And then
Georgia,
they've also
right?
been trying, they've had, battles going back and forth in Donetsk and Luhansk, which are the eastern part of Ukraine since then. But anyway, let's move on, because we could do a whole thing on that. And I do appreciate your perspective about, hey, we knew what the reaction of this guy would be.
Yes, we
That's
did.
why I don't think
And
it's
dismiss Putin as just a madman, as if he's some villain in a James Bond movie, is reductive and insulting, quite frankly, to his career.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's a madman at all, and I think
No.
to the extent that he's being sold and billed as such is dumb. And I
Yeah.
don't think we have fully our altruistic motives to just help them because we want to be the good guys. I think we don't want anyone to win, and we want to just bleed both. We want Russia to bleed dry, and we want Ukraine to be dependent upon us.
Yes. Agreed.